Correct. I'm the only one out of all 5 wearing my binoculars. I told you earlier, I do shower with them. Just in case. This picture was actually taken at a place called Spurn Bird Observatory in Yorkshire. Observatories are very, very important to monitor migration routes. For those North Americans in the audience, Canadians and Americans, are you familiar with places called Point Pelee? Yeah, okay. Point Pelee and Long Point, yeah. A few nods there. In Canada, I've been to Long Point. It's very, very, very good for migration. And I always say, we all get different things out of the hobby. Some it's just simply watching garden birds on your feeders, and that's great. For others, it goes a bit more scientific, and we start looking at banding and tracking and ringing. And bird observatories are very, very good places to do that. Cape May, anyone in from New Jersey?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cape May. You know this place?
Yeah.
Very, very good place for studying bird migration. So this is where I started. This is Spurn Bird Observatory, similar thing. So we're heading into Buenos Aires. I know just to recap, I know we all know about Buenos Aires. Obviously it's the capital of Argentina, 3 million in the city, 15 million in the greater Buenos Aires area. It's a big, big old city. And of course, Buenos Aires translates to good air or fair winds. It's a beautiful city. It's actually my second favourite after Liverpool, obviously. But it's very, very nice and I'm not particularly a culture vulture, but I do like the architecture. It's a very special place, and naturally over 20 years I've spent an awful lot of time around the streets of Buenos Aires. So I mentioned Costanera Sur before. This is it. It's right on the edge of town. You could almost, in fact, you probably can walk it from the port. It is an 860 acre ecological reserve. Lots of waterfowl, songbirds, raptors, and it was created really almost by accident. In the 1970s, the government of the day decided they were going to create a government administrative area. They dredged a lot out of the River Plate. They dumped a lot of rubble. It was land reclamation really during the 1970s. And then in the 1980s, for whatever reason, political no doubt, that was abandoned. That whole program was abandoned. And the whole 860 acre area was just really left to its own devices. And very, very quickly, nature, as it does, moved in and took over. And the current government, they've turned it into a really, really special reserve. It's very, very safe for everybody. There's lots of joggers, female joggers, people on their own, families, prams, and lots of birds. One of the other reserves is Parque 3 de Febrero, and that again is very, very good on the waterfront. Lots of wildfowl and songbirds, and again raptors as well. It's very, very nice. It's bang in the heart of the city, and it's also good for people's general mental health and well-being to have these green spaces in the city. And lastly, just on the edge, on the Atlantic coast, obviously Buenos Aires and the River Plate does run into the South Atlantic. We have the Costa del Este. Very, very good indeed for migratory species. Very good for wildfowl and of course seabirds as well. So it is birds that we're gonna cover today. Again, we only get 45 minutes. So I can't go through them all. What I've selected for you, ladies and gentlemen, is really a group of birds that you are most likely to see. Some of the more obvious species and some of the easier species to identify. And this is one of them. Pretty attractive chap. A green barred woodpecker. So we're going to go through some wildfowl, some waders, herons and ibis, lots of chats, hirundines. Hirundines is a fancy term for swallows and martins. I'm sure we're all aware of that. Woodpeckers, flycatchers, and of course we do get the odd hummingbird down here too. For those who don't know, for the North Americans in the audience, obviously a hummingbird will come as second nature to you guys, but they do not occur outside of the Americas, hummingbirds. So anyone from Europe particularly will be particularly excited to get sight of any hummingbird species whatsoever. Glittering emerald is the main species around Costanera Sur. Morning, sir. Here we have a gira cuckoo, quite a common species, got a funky hairdo, looked like me this morning getting out of bed. And gira actually literally translates from the Guarani language, it's tribal language, and it simply means bird. That's inventive, isn't it? Yeah, it literally means bird. So it's a bird cuckoo. Again, quite a common species, quite a large species, and you'll see them quite regularly sitting atop telegraph poles and wires. Naturally, down here in the subtropics, we have parrots. This is a black hooded parrot, or it does have another name actually, and that's Nande parrot. The population locally seems to have dipped a little bit, but in Buenos Aires itself, it's actually doing okay, and they nest in holes like most parrots indeed, but they will form huge communal roosts at the end of the breeding season. We have some parrots in the UK escaped called ring-necked parakeets, and they form huge flocks, and they're a bit of a pest, frankly, and they do cause some devastation to the local fruit growers. But black-hooded or Nande parrot is either known. As I say, all these presentations will be available. Our second woodpecker is a Campo flicker. I know again our closest bird in Europe will be a green woodpecker. Anyone remembers Bagpuss? Professor Yaffle? That is our green woodpecker. The flickers are the equivalent of that bird. So this is a Campo flicker with that orange band across the chest there. And again, a slightly different position of our green barred woodpecker. Like all flickers, and indeed green woodpeckers, they have a laughing call, very distinctive call, a bit like a laugh. And for those who don't know, many will know that woodpeckers eat a lot of ants, a lot of termites, and they do this with a very, very long tongue. But they also peck wood, hence the name. And that, for most animals, would cause quite an incredible amount of brain damage. If you can imagine, it's 20 beats a second into the wood, and that brain is going backwards and forwards. I can't help but give you a bit of biological science here. So what happens actually is that very, very long tongue forms what we call hyoid apparatus. And what that tongue does is it splits at the back of the skull, and it wraps around the brain almost like a seatbelt in a car, and it stops that brain bashing about within the skull case. So when that woodpecker's hammering away against that tree, that brain is kept nice and safe by the seatbelt that is formed by this woodpecker's tongue, would you believe? It's called a hyoid apparatus. Woodpeckers actually have very small brains as well, so that's not too much of an issue. And there is a very small amount of thick gel that sits around, a bit like cranial fluid in humans and mammals, but a lot thicker very gel-like. And that's effectively how woodpeckers stop themselves, doing themselves a bit of damage. A bird that will be very familiar to North Americans in the audience is a mockingbird, again, a species that we don't have in Europe or Australia or South Africa, but they are pretty widespread across the Americas. This particular species is a chalk-browed, and as the name implies, that brow over the eye is kind of like a chalky off-white colour. Pretty common across savannas, fields, parks and gardens. They're pretty aggressive, but despite being aggressive, they do actually like to form small communities of around about 20 birds. And actually what they will do, the relatives will raise chicks that aren't their own. So if they're an auntie or an uncle or a niece or a nephew, they will help to raise chicks of another parent. Quite unusual in the animal world. So the next bird, pretty indistinct, really very, very common. If you get into the parks and gardens of Buenos Aires, I guarantee you will see this. It's about 8 inches long, kind of looks a little bit like a thrush. It's kind of rufusy colour, rufusy brown. Its name is Rufus, I'm going to get this right, Hornero, because I was, without doubt, told off many, many years ago. I used to call it a hornero, because there is a H there. But some very helpful Chilean lady, or it could have been Argentinian actually, she told me you drop the H and it is pronounced Hornero. There you go. So Rufus Hornero. Now, where does the name come from? Well, hornero, as I am informed, is Spanish for baker or oven. And we'll come to a slide shortly, but this bird is in fact the national bird of Argentina.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, national bird of Argentina.
Hornero.
Oh.
And again, hornero, as I understand it, translates to oven or baker, and the reason for that is this. This is their nest, and they build a nest not that dissimilar to a rudimentary bread oven. That's where they get their name, Rufus Hornero, the national bird of Argentina. So some birds of prey coming up, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure many of you will have seen these, particularly around Ushuaia and Punta Arenas, is this bird, Chamanga caracara. Very, very common.
Right.
And I don't know whether we can see, get my clicker going. Can we just see the talons there, coming out the back? What these birds do is they actually push their talons through the tail, and so they're poking out the back, and this, in part, helps avoid predation from above, helps avoid attack from above. They're actually not very big birds of prey, and much bigger birds of prey like to have a little go at them, like to have a little pop at them, and they just slide their talons through the underside of their tail, their upper side of the tail, sorry, as a little bit of a way of a defence. These guys are pretty bright. They will follow farmers' ploughs, and if they come across a grass fire, a field fire, they will sit on the edge of that fire and they will just wait for all the small insects, the frogs, the locusts to run out of the fire, and they will pounce on them. We've seen this bird before, turkey vulture, very common across. Did we all see this in Falkland? There was lots of them, wasn't there? Yeah, I saw quite a few. And again, they're equally common here in Buenos Aires. One of the other caracaras is this bird, a southern caracara. Quite an attractive bird of prey, actually. These have quite an interesting hunting strategy. And what they do is they'll walk next to their prey for a little bit, and they'll just take a stroll next to it, and they'll just walk along like this, and rather than pouncing or attacking, they'll just put the leg out and just grab it when they feel ready to do so. They're pretty lazy, frankly. But it's quite an amusing hunting strategy. They literally will just walk alongside whatever it is that they're considering eating. They're probably giving it some thought as to whether it's poisonous or whether it's going to attack them. And when they've made that decision, then they'll go for the kill. Can anyone tell me what the next bird raptor species is going to be from this slide? Correct. Somebody's just shouted out snail kite. Very attractive bird of prey. They are across a lot of the Americas, including the southern states of North America, Mexico, Central America, and of course they're down here too in Buenos Aires, right across Costanera. So very attractive bird, and as we can see, that very long hooked decurved bill on the upper mandible that allows them to get right into the snail shell and pull out the meat of the snail. Just as a brief distraction, it isn't just birds we get across the nearest we get these guys. These are capybara, and they are the largest living rodent in the planet, and we get them right across South America. We get them, except Chile. Poor old Chile. They don't have any capybara, but apart from Chile, you get them right across. They're semi-aquatic mammals, and capybara are famous for, delightfully, that word at the bottom is one for your dinner parties when we all get back home. Autocoprophagous. And that, ladies and gentlemen, means that they eat their own poop. Nice, eh? Yeah. So they do that. They do this for a reason. As I always say, nothing in nature is by coincidence. It is all by design. And they do this because the enzymes and the bacteria and the gut flora is held within that feces. They take that back into the stomach, and that helps them digest. The cellulose is very, very difficult material to digest and break down, and it is plant material only that these guys eat, so that's why they are autocoprophagous. Moving on. Okay, this is a lovely, lovely bird. You will see lots of these around any waterway in Buenos Aires. They are called wattled jacana. There are a number of species of jacana around the world. These are wattled. And another name for them, quite a nice name actually, is a lily trotter. And they quite literally do run across the tops of lily pads in the waterways of Buenos Aires. Now, the females of this species are what we call polyandrous. Polyandrous. Polyandrous, ladies and gentlemen, basically means this lady has 4 or 5 husbands. Yeah, that sounds like hard work, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she will mate. So usually in nature, a male will have perhaps 2 or 3, 4 females with which he will mate with, and he will service each of those nests. He will collect food for each of the chicks. It's actually, in wattled jacanas, the other way round. It's the males that incubate the eggs and raise the chicks, and it's the females that help support those nests. Polyandrous. Another bird is the purple gallinule, pretty big bird, quite common across North America. We do also get them here in Buenos Aires. They are prone to vagrancy actually, ladies and gentlemen, and they have been found as far away as Iceland, would you believe, Great Britain, and indeed Portugal. And as far south as Tierra del Fuego, they're quite a migratory species. Here we have black a white-backed stilt, which is a very close relative of the black-necked stilt, or in Europe it's a black-winged stilt. One of the waded species that we can find here in Buenos Aires. I'm just going to rattle through, just always, I could stand here for hours, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm conscious of time, as usual. Scarlet-headed blackbird, very attractive. This guy has, it's called gaping, and it puts its closed beak into mud and earth, and then opens that beak in order to prise open dried out mud to see if there's any insects within it. Part of the icterid groups. It says blackbird, it isn't a blackbird, it isn't even a thrush, it is much more closely related to the grackles. And again, anyone from North America and Canada will know exactly what a grackle is. This is a saffron-cowled blackbird. Saffron-cowled blackbird. Again, it's not a blackbird, it's one of the icterid groups, a bit like a grackle. Brown and yellow marsh bird. Brown-chested martin. Are we all familiar with bank swallows? Sand martins, as we call them in the UK. Got that brown band across the chest. Form big flocks to head north from Buenos Aires in the winter. But unlike bank swallows, which are only about that big, brown-chested martins are about twice the size. They're really big birds indeed. You have a Chilean swallow. Just give the guys in the front some time to take photographs. And then moving on to some wildfowl, we have the Chiloe widgeon. Very attractive bird indeed. That male has that blaze of blue through the eye. I actually saw a few of these on Falkland actually, and they all migrate north towards Brazil during the winter. Here we have a red shoveler. See that big bill that it has? That is basically where it gets its name from. And within that shoveler, a bit like the baleen whales that we saw, the humpback whales, where they have the keratin plates, the sieve-like plates. These have kind of similar, like laminae, and they hang down from the bill, and it's like effectively a sieve. And these birds just go along the surface of the water like this, sieving through the water and taking out some of the microorganisms and the zooplankton. Shoveler, red shoveler. This is a very pretty bird. This is a silvery grebe. And not to be confused with a very close relative, a white tufted grebe. Just to put the two side by side. I think we can all see they're pretty different. If you're anything like my sisters, ladies and gentlemen, to them, a bird is a bird is a bird. They just don't get it. They just simply, to them, all birds look the same. But to me, not. And clearly to you guys too. But yeah, they look quite different to me. Both very attractive. Bright red eye.
How big, Alan, are those ones?
Grebes have very flat legs, but the bones in the legs are completely flat, and the feet are very lobed, and that facilitates excellent diving and excellent swimming, and they're set very far back on the bird to allow it to propel itself quite easily through the water. So the next three species, ladies and gentlemen, are what we call, and I hate saying this word because I never get it right, onomatopoeic. Onomatopoeic. For those who don't know, it basically means the bird calls its name. Okay, so if I were a bird, I would go, Alan, Alan, Alan. Okay, now, these guys call their name. So this is a Coscaroba swan. Coscaroba swan. Kind of looks a bit like a duck crossed with a swan with that big bright red bill stuck to the face. And this literally, when it calls Coscaroba, Coscaroba, or close enough. And I'm sure many North Americans in the audience will know this bird. This is a great kiskadee. And similarly, these guys go kiskadee, kiskadee, kiskadee when they call. Quite a distinctive call. Last but not least is our southern lapwing, ladies and gentlemen. This is pretty common down here. What I will say is this bird doesn't go southern lapwing, southern lapwing. Okay. But what it does do is it goes quiero, 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 makes this very distinctive squawking sound. And in fact, the Uruguayan and South American name for this bird is quiero, quiero. It isn't southern lapwing. That's the English name. So onomatopoeic. Those last three species all call their own name. And again, this bird is in fact the national bird of Uruguay.
Oh, Uruguay.
Quiero, quiero.
That would be...
Moving on. Very attractive bird. We're going to look at some flycatchers now. This is a vermilion flycatcher. Very attractive, but pretty vicious. When it catches something in midair, it will hammer it to death. It will find a branch and it will bash its brains out, and then it will eat it. And then the next one, we have a forked tail flycatcher. Very, very attractive. That tail, again, not by coincidence, is that long because it acts as a very, very effective rudder. They do fly at some speed, 70 kilometers an hour, and in order for them to stall, deliberately stall, and turn on a sixpence, and turn on a dime, in order to catch their prey, that tail facilitates that ability. We have a white Mongita, again, one of the Thailand flycatchers, very, very attractive indeed. Now the next slide is all about camouflage. And as we can see, we have a rufescent tiger heron. And that's pretty incredible that bird blends in so well, particularly the lower half of the body. Obviously the head and the bill and the eye sticks out, but the lower half of that body is almost perfectly adapted to its environment. Again, camouflage is all about evading predation. Some of the bigger raptors will take a bird like this. The next bird, very, very common across the whole of the Americas. I'm sure many North Americans are familiar with this, and South Americans. This is a rufous collared sparrow. I talked yesterday about penguin subspecies and splits, about how a bird can split into two species depending upon where it lives. They generally start off as what we call subspecies before they eventually end up as full species. And incredibly, rufous collared sparrow has around about 25 different subspecies across the Americas, depending upon where it lives. Some live very, very high altitude, some live at sea level, and some live in areas of very, very high salinity, some of the salt pans. And some of their physiological adaptations, I talked to you about the supraorbital gland of the seabirds that allow them to extract fresh water from salt. Passerines, perching birds like rufous collared sparrow do not have that supraorbital gland. They do find themselves in fairly high saline areas, and that particular subspecies has kidneys 25% larger than the rufous collared sparrows that live near sea level. So again, it's all about physiological adaptations. Coming back to our friend, the flamingos.
Oh.
We have a half black bill there, Chilean flamingo. They generally have greyish legs. And we're going to touch briefly, ladies and gentlemen, on colour. Here we have one of the most glorious birds that we'll find in Buenos Aires. This is a glittering emerald. And birds come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and of course colours. Some are dull, some are bright, some are red, some are orange, some are reflective. Hummingbirds being one of them. And I'm sure we all know flamingos get their colour from carotenoids, from the shrimps that they eat, and of course cardinals are the same. We all familiar, North Americans, red cardinal? Yeah. They get their colour from pigmentation. There's effectively two types of colour. It's called pigmentation colour and structural colours. I'll come to what structural colours are in just a tick. But things like flamingos and cardinals, they can manufacture reds and yellows and even greens to a degree through what they eat, through their pigmentation. In nature, blue is a very, very difficult colour to manufacture, if not impossible. But we will all be familiar with blue tits in Europe, or blue jays, or blue grosbeaks, and they do this in a very, very different way, and these are called structural colours. And what we have are layers of keratin and melanin layers, and effectively what that does is bend light. So as the light goes through these feathers of, let's say, an indigo bunting or a blue tit or a blue jay, the longer wavelengths of reds, for example, are absorbed by that structure, and the blues are scattered out. That gives you the colour, and that is called structural colour through refraction. Refraction is the key word. In contrast, ladies and gentlemen, we have reflection. And similarly, keratins and melanin layers in the structure there, and the rhodule layers in such a way that when the light hits those feathers, it doesn't go through them, but is in fact reflected back. And that's where you get the reflection of hummingbirds and all those colours. So in short, reflection sends light back to the direction from which it came, albeit at a slightly different angle, and that's why sometimes when you look at a hummingbird's throat, 1 second it can look black, the next minute it can look bright red, ruby red or green, or whatever colour bounces back to you at that angle. Refraction, on the other hand, the light actually goes through the medium and comes out the other side. A little bit like when you pop a straw in a glass of water, it just suddenly bends. Yeah, that's refraction. Reflection, the light is coming back to you. So ladies and gentlemen, we are heading towards the end of our trip. We will all soon be back at home in the mundanity of life, I'm afraid. But what I'd like you all to do is just please remember just a few facts that hopefully I've given you over the last couple of weeks. I'd like you to continue your holiday, this amazing experience, for the rest of your life. And I'd like you to do this in the following 3 ways. The next time you are in the supermarket buying ice, just remember, why isn't my ice blue? Like the icebergs we see. And we all know why it's all blue, because it hasn't been compressed. The air hasn't been pushed out of it. So when you're in the supermarket buying your ice or the freezer, you know why your ice cubes aren't blue. When we're buying semi-skimmed milk at 2% milk, remember, whale milk, seal milk is 60% fat.
Wow.
Ooh.
And that allows these animals to grow very quickly and survive in Antarctica. And indeed, it's the
60%,
fat that allows these birds to make these amazing migrations from the northern hemisphere,
60%.
or the autophagy
60%
we talked
fat.
about, where they eat themselves, dissolve their own organs.
2%.
Fat is how they do it. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, a loaf of bread, okay? Just remember, when you're picking up that loaf of bread, it may have been baked in an oven not dissimilar to this. So I hope that allows you to continue your holiday when we're back in the supermarket. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to give yourselves a huge round of applause. You have been a great audience. It is always a pleasure for me. We do get some, how can I put this, challenging questions that make me think, some not so much. And it's been great to spend this time with you. All that's left for me to say is have a very, very safe journey home.
Sure.
Any questions, do come and see me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.